By the early 1580s, John Dee was an accomplished mathematician, astrologer, tutoring Greek, cryptographer, cartographer, etc. He was fancy genius pants. He had traveled to the continent learning a range and teaching on a range of topics from the exoteric to the deeply esoteric. He learned the rudiments of Kabbalah and Hebrew. He amassed volumes and volumes about alchemy, and in 1564 he had published his Monos Hieroglyphica, a text that Brian Vickers once referred to as the most obscure book ever published by an Englishman. Back in England, his library was the largest in all the land. It brimmed with scientific equipment and antiquarian tomes pilfered from the recently dissolved monasteries. By the early 1580s, Dr. John Dee had spent basically a lifetime searching for the most profound truths of mathematics, mysticism, alchemy, and the occult. He was in his mid-50s when he seems to have begun searching for what he called more radical truths by peering into the world beyond his own, into the world of the angels. Through mediums known as scryers, Dee would apparently make contact with an entire ecology of such beings who would reveal to him what is now known as Enochian Magic. However, prior to the arrival of the celestial speech or the Enochian language and the apocalyptic cryptography of the Gabofal ritual or the Liber Loagaeth, before the hymns or the calls in the angelic language were revealed, before the divine espionage of the parts of the earth system, Dee would and his scryer Edward Kelley receive visions forming the foundation of a completely novel system of angelic planetary magic known most commonly as the Heptarchia Mystica, or the mystical sevenfold rulership. From roughly March of 1582 to November of the same year, and a little bit of April 1583, the angels would reveal the plans for the construction of a kind of magical temple, which would reconcile and dignify the Magus with the divine celestial world, otherwise fallen into sinful disrepair. A system of magic that would reach back into the world of traditional Solomonic Grimoire style magic, but also radically synthesize virtually every form of medieval and Renaissance magic, the magic dominating Dee's day, into a grand unified system, all as a precursor to the apocalyptic angelic revelations to come through 1583. Let's explore the magical genius and the baffling cryptography of the Heptarchia Mystica. Make sure to subscribe and check out my other content on topics in esotericism, and I'd hope you consider supporting my work of producing scholarly, free topics like this on esotericism by taking a look at my Patreon, maybe a one-time donation or a shirt from our merch store. You can also use the super thanks link below the video. Also, I want to express my very deep thanks to you, Aaron Leitch, for taking a look over at this long, rambling script. I'm always humbled and honored when expert practitioners like Leitch and others help academics like me. Thank you, Aaron. You can find links to Aaron's fantastic books, including autograph books and ritual items, in the description, so support your local occult authors. But now, to the foundations of Enochian magic, the Heptarchia Mystica. I'm Dr. Justin Sledge, and welcome to Esoterica, where we explore the arcane in history, philosophy, and religion. As I mentioned in the introduction, to appreciate and understand the Heptarchia Mystica, we have to place ourselves within John Dee's aims and situate ourselves among the access he had to his esoteric holdings. To put it bluntly, John Dee began his mystical exercises to learn what he called radical truths. Radical in the most literal sense of that word, meaning going down to the root. This is an incredibly Renaissance style form of esotericism. Dee wanted immediate access to the totality of truth itself, and going to the source of that truth was going to the one who created it all, the divine realm, and that was a logical, if not somewhat heterodox, means to do so. Thus, the scrying sessions, the conversations with angels, are not an unreasonable means by which to achieve those truths that he so desperately taught. Not that that would have been much of a defense before an inquisitional tribunal, which he was invited to while he was on the continent. Secondly, Dee's library in the 1580s was among the largest, if not the largest, in England at that time. And given his collection of volumes pilfered from the dissolved monasteries and his buying during his time on the continent, also contained a singular concentration of occult literature, perhaps singular in all of Europe at that time. If a magical revolution were going to take place, it was going to take place at Mortlake. Dee had the driving motive, but also the intellectual means to inform and decode any esoteric wisdom he would have received through any occult practice. What he lacked was a conduit for contact with the divine world. But he would find that in the early 1580s as well in the alchemist, notary, and con man, the mystical adept Edward Kelley, aka Edward Talbot, aka Edward, I found some red powder in a grave, guys, and I can make gold, and you need to stop calling me a con man or I'll murder you, because he kind of did that one time. He got drunk and murdered a guy. Oh, lovable Edward Kelley. I love you, Edward. While Dee would employ other scryers such as Barnabas Saul prior to Kelley and Bartholomew Hickman after Kelley, even his own son Arthur when Kelley huffed off in a puff once, the sessions with Kelley are by all means the most preserved and the most dramatic. While the first sessions mostly concern questions about the quasi-ciphertext of the Book of Soiga, you can check out my whole episode on the Book of Soiga if you're interested in that in the card above. It's a fantastic cipher algorithm that was just solved in the 1990s, along with some demonic interference with a false layman. Of course, you're always going to get some demonic interference here. The angels Uriel and Michael quickly began to reveal a series of ritual objects and magical furniture meant as a means of conciliation and dignification of the Magus, allowing the Magus to rise in purity beyond their sinful earthly condition to properly establish contact with the divine realm. In effect, there are two general revelations that make up the Heptarchia Mystica. The first is the spiritual cosmology of the cosmos from the highest angelic beings down nearest to our realm, the ministering angels, which have dominion over basically any given hour of any given day. So from the very throne of God down to here. This revelation showcases the great spiritual chain of being whereby the spiritual mechanism, the spiritual efficient causation of the universe and the cosmos is revealed. But as knowledge very truly is magic power in this case, knowing the nature of that spiritual ecology provides the Magus with untold powers to, influence spiritual and occult forces or to behold the goings-on of any remote region in the cosmos. That espionage element's going to persist as a theme right through all of the so-called Enochian Magic, which is pretty unsurprising given Dee's place in the royal court as basically a spy who wasn't a spy back then. As we'll see in a moment, the revelation of the Heptarchic ecology is one of also the more revolutionary in that most of the spirits which populate that system are otherwise nowhere recorded in the history of magic or exoteric religious texts for that matter. Thus, the revelation of the Heptarchia system makes the claim to be a restoration of ancient lost knowledge through which fallen human beings can, again, 1, know the truth of how the divine world is structured, and 2, become reconciled and dignified such that they can again connect with the divine world and interact with it more fully. And that brings me to the second aspect of the Heptarchia revelations. It contains the ritual tools, the items, the jewelry, the furniture, by which to construct a kind of temple in which the magus can achieve a state of otherwise lost purity. Again, the language is always one of conciliation and dignification, conciliation with God and dignification of the magus. All of this incredibly typical concerns of Renaissance magic, by which that contact with the spiritual world can be made and maintained through time. It's through that contact that the magus can directly commune with the divine realm, learning its secrets and apparently, again, beholding parts of the world that are no longer available to human beings, but also, of course, influencing the evolution and alteration of the cosmos itself. And again, this is all achieved by a grand synthesis of so much magical technology that had come before, as if the Heptarchia Mystica collected so much of the Solomonic and the Grimoire and the Kabbalistic and the Renaissance traditions of the magical past and present of Dee's time, synthesizing them and restoring them into a grand unified theory and practice of magic. For that reason alone, just that, it's a bit of a pity, frankly, that the Heptarchic revelations are passed over as people dash over in the direction to get to the celestial speech or the Enochian language material there with the Liber Loagaeth. That material is only really appreciable, in my opinion, within the theory and practice of the Heptarchia Mystica. Now, as we'll get into it, I think it'll be relatively obvious why people gloss over it. Sadly, it's, for me at least, what makes Enochian magic so fun and completely mind-melting. Numbers and letters and grids and permutations and quasi-cryptographic puzzles that just must have cranked Dee's tractor, as we say down south. John Dee. Yeah. So I'm not going to strictly follow the spirit diaries as I lay out all this. My reasoning is pretty simple here, and I hope you can appreciate it. It's just much clearer to my mind to present a synthetic picture of what's going on in the sort of canonical versions of the Heptarchia, as much as there is one, then go day by day through the March through November 1582 and April-ish and beyond to 1583, and, well, beyond that too, because the diaries themselves are constantly being in a state of correction, tweaking, being recalibrated by the angels, Kelley getting some random revelation by himself, and Dee's marginal notes correcting all of that, and as he's trying to make sense of this entire system. Now, I'd be lying if I told you there was some synthetic version of the revelations that exists which eliminates all doubts and presents a total, logically coherent system. Nah. Nope. But the evidence, the system is surprisingly coherent if you study the diaries carefully, especially with an eye toward the Agrippa-influenced worldview of the system of the correspondences and the astrology that's at work in all this that nearly always informs Dee and Kelley. So, by turning to Sloan 3188, the initial transcription of those early diaries, along with Dee's manual of the system itself, Sloan 3191, itself a synthesis and précis of the conversations, we can forward a relatively coherent summary of the divine ecology as it's presented in the Heptarchia revelations, along with some degree of detail with the ritual furniture and other objects. Unsurprisingly, the system is going to prove something like a series of fractals of the number 7 and the letter B, repeated and nested over and over and over again from the heights of the divine realm down to the angel of any given hour of the day to the planetary correspondences that are out there in the world. So one can basically pick anywhere to begin in the system, and I suppose I'll pick where the system is probably its most innovative. The Heptarchy spirits themselves, the spirits of the Heptarchia. So let's kind of start in media res, if you will, and work our way forwards and backwards in the system, both through the Heptarchia spirits and also the angelic furniture revealed. On Sunday, April 29th, the angel Michael sets out the fundamental array of the system in a single, somewhat tortured session. Here there are a series of 7 by 7 grids, get used to grids, with letters arrayed in a shape of a cross, 343 squares in total, each with esoteric significance all their own. From these grids, the angel Uriel instructs Dee and Kelley of the kind of quasi-cryptographic meme by which to extract the names of 45 spiritual kings and princes that work and rule under God. Those 49 names were subsequently arranged in a circle for more easy copacetic viewing, revealing that they exist under a planetary sign in a day of the week, a king, a prince, and 5 governing angels, their names all begin with the letter B. These angelic beings rotate in rulership through the cosmic eons, time and space acting as a kind of grand clock in the Heptarchia system, such that during Dee's time, there in the 1580s, primary authority was given over to the king and prince of Venus, Banaspol, and Bliston, known as Karmara, or Marmar, spelled with an M, but always pronounced Karmara, and Hagonel, which these might be transferable titles or further esoteric names of those the prince and the king of Venus, respectively. Further, each prince is given command over a further 42 ministering angels divided into 6 groups of 7 angels, which are given dominion over the hours of the day and the night. Those drill all the way down basically to our realm of things. The remaining angels seem to follow general directives from their commanding officers. Again, the system is very much kind of militaristic and feudal, as is typical of the time. Thus, the system at this level contains 7 princes, 7 kings, 35 governors, and 294 ministering angels, of which those 294 are the closest to the ongoing machinations of physical reality. Though careful readers will also notice that the planets and the functions of the Heptarchic kings and the princes in these more grimoire-like sections are, well, they're patently confused, and this is especially given their astrological correspondences, and frankly, they're just incomplete. They're just incomplete to boot. This is a place where in-depth knowledge of the system of Renaissance magic, the angelic diaries, and a careful analysis of things like Dee's marginal notes and other text from the diaries has allowed, to my mind, I think, a convincing reconstruction and frankly a correction of the Heptarchic system as it appears in those more grimoire-like sections from the latter part of 1582. In fact, I'll leave Aaron Leitch's wonderful article on sort of completing the Heptarchia system in the description if you want to go check that out. Now, what is clear is that the Heptarchia system is meant to allow one to interact with these beings. And what follows in the Spirit Conversations is a series of introductions to these otherwise unknown angels in the history of religion and magic. These are utterly new entities. These pages follow a grimoire-like pattern, a kind of lesser Keel Solomon-ish pattern of descriptions of these beings and their retinues, their sigils, and the system of grids from which their ministering angels, the names of those angels, are decoding, reading downwards, and then right-shifting the letters. This stuff needs an animator. Again, this is a place where the spirit diaries are very traditional, very Solomonic-like, and at the time, yet truly innovative with a wholly new angelic host. Now, I'm not going to go and summarize all those grimoire-like sections, though they are fabulously wonderful. The angels there are outfitted with all kinds of amazing costumes. Some of them have musical instruments and flags, etc. You can go read those sections easily for yourself in the diaries or other books. However, these are not by any means all the spirits in this angelic ecology, by no means. Following this system is another system sometimes referred to as the Heptarchic Angels of the Family of Light. Sounds like some kind of hippie cult out in California. This is a system of 4 groups of 7 generational angels, the daughters of light, the daughters of the daughters of light, the sons of light, and the sons of the sons of light. These are in generational order, which means that the sons of light are born to the daughters of light, and the sons of light are the great-grandchildren of the daughters of light. But to understand how these angels are revealed, some of which play a decisive role in the Enochian revelations which follow, we need to turn to some of the upper world of the divine ecology and the revelation of the seal of God of truth, without any doubt the most iconic symbol of all of Enochian magic. Although I think many people recognize this seal, Most people have no idea how any of these letters are actually generated. Divine seals bearing an iconic or symbolic representation of the nature or name of God are simply a fixture in magical practice. So much so that when the angels actually bade Dee and Kelley to go produce one, the angels basically told them just to go get one from one of Dee's magical tomes, probably a version of the Liber Loagaeth seal. However, Dee pointed out that he had several such seals. He had a wealth of angelic and divine seals and inquired of the angels which one to use. Of course, they're not all the same. This would prompt the angels to reveal a wholly new divine seal, the Sigillium Dei Emet, literally the seal of God, truth, or the seal of the true God, depending on how you think that Hebrew word is functioning there. Random Hebrew word for truth there, Emet. So how was this seal generated? Well, get you some espresso, pour you a stiff glass of whiskey, maybe even eat a handful of golden teachers to... let's just do it. The angel Michael produced a kind of show and tell, an angelic show and tell, where a series of 40 angels appeared, revealing either a letter above a number above a letter, or sometimes just a letter, sometimes capitalized, sometimes not, sometimes two letters together, and then, a random lowercase Greek omega, just for funsies, before, of course, praising God and disappearing with some pomp and a puff of smoke. These 40 letter number combinations form the outer circumference of the seal. Now, a divine name is revealed by using that circle of letter and number combinations as a kind of combination lock. It rotates back and forth. So starting at various points of the system provided by the angels, and then rotating the series clockwise and counterclockwise, counting using the numbers in the position of the letter and the number, if they're above or below, clockwise when the number is above a letter, counterclockwise when the letter is over a number, counting until you get to a cell with only a letter, then stop. So it goes like this. Take those letters together. When you finish with that, you get a divine name, which the angels provide an accompanying sigil and a number which corresponds to the starting of those cells, the starting point of the cells that get you winding around this thing. That supreme name of God, as the text has it, is Galethog. Galethog. This divine name is populated along with some of the little crosses on the outer heptagon of the seal. Within that heptagon is a series of angelic names revealed to Kelley in a 7x7 grid, more grids, composed of the planetary angels of Zaphkiel for Saturn, Zadkiel for Jupiter, Kumael for Mars, Raphael for the Sun, Haniel for Venus, Michael for Mercury, and Gavriel for the Moon, and some more little cross there at the end to fill the thing in. But to populate the heptagon, the square is read right to left, top to bottom, thus beginning with Ziirhia and ending Eeimg cross. These angels probably represent the highest realm of the Heptarchy closest to the divine. Then another 7x7 grid is revealed. You having fun yet? I'm having fun. This time with a series of letters and numbers, letter-number dot combinations, which generally function as L or EL, angelic of God, typically angelic theonyms, at least in Hebrew. All right. The daughters of light are generated by reading the square diagonally downwards, top right, until the longest diagonal and populate the inner star. The sons of light are derived from reading diagonally upwards from the bottom left to until the longest diagonal. They both end in STIMCUL, stem cool, again placed clockwise below the daughters. The daughters of the daughters and the sons of light are derived from reading along the other diagonal, ditto the sons of the sons, and they're all placing increasingly inward clockwise into the sigil of truth. Further zigzag decoding reveals the names of the planetary angels: Sabathiel for Saturn, Zedekiel for Jupiter, Madimiel for Mars, Sameliel for the Sun, Nogael for Venus, Horaviel for Mercury, and Lavavanel for the Moon, laid out in a cross at the center of the sigil. Finally, with some more crosses peppered in there, the sigil of God, the truth, is nearly complete. You just got to flip it over and reverse it, Missy Elliott style, Add a cross with the divine name Agla, Atar Gibor Leolam Adonai. God is forever mighty. Oh, and you got to make 5 more of these in pure beeswax. Beeswax. The main one a little over an inch thick and around 9 inches in circumference. The other one's about 5 inches and so in circumference. The other 4, by the way, are going to go into boxes upon which the great table of practice, the holy table, will be set, but more on the table in a moment. Now, how exactly the Heptarchic royal family fit into the 7 kings, 7 princes, 35 governors, and 294 ministering angels mentioned earlier isn't totally clear. The sons of light do seem to minister to the kings, so there's likely some general ministerial relation here, but it's opaque. However, the angels derived from the second 7x7 grid aren't minor players in the revelations by any means. Madimi, who Dee would actually name his daughter after, acts as a kind of angelic go-between in the sessions. She even grows up throughout the sessions and would eventually prompt the whole wife-swapping incident. You knew that the wife-swapping incident was going to get talked about. It's Madimi. Madimi did it. There she appears like a fully grown woman. Ave, is one of the Sons of Light, also plays the most Enochic role in the whole business and would actually lay out the great table of the Earth system. Il, they go by Il, or Ilamessa, reveals the names of the 30 Aethers and the calls in the angelic language to open them. Ath reveals the proper use of the Liber Loagaeth, and Ath shuts the boys down because they're trying to use the Liber Loagaeth to find buried treasure. Be still, my heart, buried treasure. In other words, these spirits are anything other than merely derivative or secondary in the later revelations of the Enochian system. Thus, going through the torturous cryptographic process of understanding how at least the names of these entities come to populate the system, well, I think it's important. I don't think you should just jump over all this just to get to all the cool, can the wings of the wonder framed in the depth of my jaws. Yeah, that stuff's cool, but you got to earn it with cryptography. I love this stuff. Just grids. Man, I love grids. However, it's also worth mentioning here that there are a lot of other spiritual creatures or angelic beings that seem to fit neither in the system of the 49 Heptarchic kings and their retinues, nor in the system of the royal family derived from that second 7x7 grid. Galva, for instance, this is like Sophia, like wisdom in the whole text. She's like the end for the revelation of the final page of the Liber Loagaeth. Nalvaj is instrumental in the revelation of the celestial or angelic speech, the Enochian language, along with the Mapsama. These angels, among a few others, seem to appear in neither system. And it's unclear how they fit into the entire angelic ecology. And yet, they nevertheless remain decisive in the fundamental revelations of the magical system or systems, thus making them, well, all the more mysterious. More mysteries to add to the pile here. Thus, while the Heptarchic squares in the second 7x7 grid seem to produce many, most, and some of the more important angels, these systems do not exhaustively describe the totality of the angelic ecology. So, I have no idea. Again, there's a pile over there. I keep a pile of mysteries just right over. It's off camera, but it's on my pile. You can go through my pile. It's like the Oxyrhynchus of esotericism, just right over there. Perhaps next, it's best to describe the revelation of the layman and the Holy Tablet, the text of both of which is derived from 2 12x7 tables, grids composed of the names of the Heptarchic kings and the princes, which vary slightly. I refer to the layman table as the asymmetric table and to the table as the table. Sorry, there's a symmetric table. These items were revealed in April of 1583 in the midst of the later celestial speech and the Liber Loagaeth sections, again showing just how much of this ship is absolutely being built at sea. The revelation of the layman, by the way, had a bit of a bumpy start with the demon introducing a false one early on in the sessions, so beware of demons, but let's see how the correct one was revealed. So let's start with the asymmetric 12x7 layman table. This table, read right to left, is composed starting with the Heptarchic Solar King, Bobogel, but with the Venusian Prince, Bornogo. And then it continues with this asymmetry on the left with Solar Befathis and Marcia Babalel, and it continues like that. I call it asymmetric because you would expect the Solar King to be matched with its Solar Prince, which is exactly what you get with asymmetric table. That's the table that you use to make the holy table. Yeah, you got that already. But from this 12x7 heptarchic table, the asymmetric one, along with a center 3x4 section which overlaps the king's and the prince's names, the text of the layman is derived in 3 sections, those of the flesh, the heart, and the skin. Why flesh and skin are different, I don't know. The flesh letters are basically the rows and the columns of the 12x7 table, though divided into groups of 2s and 3s. The hearts are generated from the interior of the 3x4 table in weird, inconsistent zigzag patterns. Finally, the skin letters come from the left, right, in 2 columns, with the upper and lowermost forming the cardinal points of the center of the diamond of the layman, and the rest of the letters filling in the grid, though not in a totally consistent way. They seem to go left to right, but then they get scrambled about 3 lines in. Now you switch all the letters from Latin to the Celestial or the Enochian alphabet, and then you flip it and reverse it. Some more Missy Elliott jokes. At any rate, you flip it over to the back side of the layman. You have to attach a small crystal lens to it, around which the names of Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, and Mercury are written. Why Saturn is missing and the moon are also missing from that is anyone's guess. Ditto with how to attach the lens. I mean, they didn't have like hot glue guns or anything back then, but I don't know, maybe could use some more beeswax. But when active, the layman is covered, much like the other similar laymans in the Solomonic magical tradition. In this case, it's covered with a bit of light linen. In fact, a lot of this is covered over, the way that Aaron Leitch had pointed out to me in private correspondence. The layman, a positive mainstay in medieval ceremonial magic, harkens back to the days of the Israelite high priest vestment of the Turim, the rose. This is a breastplate with jewels representing the 12 tribes of Israel, and the celestial zodiac, if you believe the likes of Ibn Ezra. Further, that breastplate also contained a means by contacting the divine to learn the divine will. It's a divinely sanctioned form of divination allowed to by the Israelites. And further, it allowed you to know the future more generally, though the rabbis debate about how exactly it was supposed to be used and how it worked, the famed Urim Vatumim. It seems that the attached lens here allows the magus to see the state of God's people throughout the whole earth, and is functioning in some analogous form to the Turim and the Urim Vatumim of the high priest of ancient Israel. So again, the magus is transformed into a priest-like character. The holy table, or the instrument of conciliation, was to be composed of sweet wood. I always imagine it being made from really fragrant cedar, but I'm probably wrong about that. There's a lot of guesses around what it might mean. It's about 3 foot square and about as much off the ground, set atop those boxes containing the smaller 5-inch sigils of truth, remember. Here we employ another 12x7 table, this time read left to right with the Heptarchic kings and princes, now in symmetric planetary order, Venus, Sun, Mars down to the moon. This one's symmetrical. However, to get the lettering on the table, one adds back the initial B on the corners of the table and then reads up and down vertically from the prince side of the table to the king side of the table in 3 lines going either clockwise or counterclockwise, starting with the top row either left to right or right to left. There's some debate about this. Casaubon's table in True and Faithful Relations favors the former. Peterson, O.G. Peterson, defends this view. Other occultists, including Leitch and Duquette, also titans in the industry, prefer the latter, and a drawing of it by Dee honestly shows this configuration in the diaries. Though Dee often changes things in the diaries, honestly, it's all very confusing here to me. If is celestial or Enochian flows right to left like Hebrew, Casaubon should be, well, backwards, and the text should go counterclockwise around the table. But to Peterson's credit, the diaries do seem to indicate a left to right clockwise flow, at least in one description of the table, and the letters flow that way around the table. Luckily for me, I ain't got to settle this debate. Y'all got to figure that. Practitioners, y'all fix this. Let me know how it goes with the angels' conversations. Though, like other asymmetric 12x7, there is also another overlapping 3x4 grid section at the center of the kings and the princes. Well, you simply rotate that 3x4 grid 45 degrees counterclockwise or clockwise, depending on your interpretation of the diaries and the data presented in them, and that becomes the center of the grid within the large hexagram on the table. Now, like the layman, switch it and reverse it. Kind of. You put everything in Enochian or celestial letters. Sorry for I keep making that Missy Elliott joke. But at any rate, a table that once belonged to John Dee, it's now lost in a fire, had them painted red with a gold background with a blue border. The large hexagram in the center was also gold. The center letters were gold with a blue grid around them, and that all looks frightfully garish to my opinion. The angels themselves don't really seem to care much about what color all this stuff is supposed to be. They kind of tersely remark at one point, "We have no respect of color." I kind of imagine them sounding like Transformers for some reason. Again, the Holy Table conjures up to the mind the Israelite temple imagery, but is most probably directly related to the Ars Almadel. This is a mode of spirit and angel conjuring, employing a similarly decorated portable shrine table, though the Holy Table, the Enochian table here, doesn't feature holes drilled in it, which incense could waft through, but is meant again to support the central wax sigil of God, the sigil of God Emmet, which again supports a seer stone on top of that. However, with the incense of creations placed atop the table, it very much more resembles the table of practice to be found in the astrological planetary magic of texts like the Ars Paulina, which again would ultimately be found in the Lesser Key of Solomon. Again, so much of the Heptarchic system is synthesizing previous forms of magic. Speaking of those incense of creation, they're just revealed out of whole cloth. They're just revealed all complete at once following the revelation of the seal of God Emet. They are 7 planetary sigils or talismans made either from purified tin or they're just painted directly upon the holy table. You have some options here. Again, while they are revealed in Latin letters, they're ultimately meant again to be shown and used with celestial or Enochian letters. While they have some ritual use, exactly how they're employed isn't clear. I mean, it's not like you have to pick them up, otherwise they couldn't just be painted on the table, but they were placed around the seal of God Emet, used around the seer stone, that is, in the traditional planetary order there. Because they were revealed wholly one incense at a time, why some are square and others are circular inside of a square isn't clear. Again, it's my pile of mysteries over there. Likewise, the content of each of these incenses is also completely mysterious, though one will notice the preponderance of the letter B, or the celestial Enochian letter Pa. My own speculation is that Dee and Kelley via Reuchlin, or via Agrippa via Reuchlin, latched onto the importance of the letter Bet in the Kabbalah and the Hebrew Kabbalah as having to do with creation. The first letter of the Torah, Bereshit, is it's word in the beginning. The first word for creation, Bereshit bara, like God, in the beginning God created, again, ba ba ba. Commentaries on the letter Bet in traditional Kabbalah strongly link the letter with the act of creation, but again, this is totally speculation on my part if I'm being honest here. Though interestingly enough, Aaron Leitch and I did come to very similar conclusions independently in this regard. I just found this out this morning when reading Aaron's comments on this episode. So, great minds, cracked minds, think alike. Finally, we come to the golden ring, which the angels make clear is necessary for the magical practice. Of course, the angel Michael also reveals that this was the ring given over to Solomon for his use in magical powers, controlling demons to build the temple perhaps, restored here in the Enochian diaries for the first time. Unlike the rest of this complicated equipment, the ring is rather simple. It's just a gold band with a flat square bezel, with the Hebrew word Peleh, miracle, written in the corners, and a circled line through it with a letter V or U and L vertically. Perhaps this is a reference to the same character on the solar ensign of creation, gold being a nice kind of piece of connective tissue between the solar ensign and the gold ring. The divine name Peleh is written in Latin letters for some reason rather than in Hebrew, but it's only 3 letters in Latin. But it's only 3 letters in Hebrew, which I guess would break the symmetry of the ring, I suppose. Just strikes me as odd that you would have a Hebrew name for God written in Latin letters. Whatever. Regardless, this is a divine name. It's used in Exodus and the Psalms. We still use it every week in the Jewish liturgy. Again, this is probably found in by Dee and Kelley in Agrippa's occult philosophy, but ultimately it entered non-Jewish Kabbalah via Reuchlin and texts like De Verbo Mirifico. Now, along with all of this, one uses a seer stone, or scrying stone, in this case, a pretty simple 2-inch diameter crystal ball, though sometimes it is set into a kind of device in the diaries. By the way, there's no evidence that the black obsidian mirror in the British Museum was ever owned, much less used by John Dee. In fact, if you know anything about the Heptarchic system, it doesn't really fit into any of the ritual furniture we've been describing. You can't lay it flat on the sigil of truth. You need to prop it up, and how do you do that exactly? Now, Dee actually draws the seer stone he's using on several occasions in the diaries. You can see pictures of the seer stone. So again, it's just a smallish crystal ball, now with a little red silk as carpet for the holy table and the scrying chair, and everything else described so far in the Magus is basically ready to do, well, what exactly? And how? Well, we get some clues of the how from Sloane 3188 and 3191, which include petitionary prayers for the spirits to appear and for the angels, do strongly suggest that the ritual equipment was meant to reconcile and dignify the Magus above their normally sinful station to commune with the celestial world. But to what end? The most common answer in the diary seems to be some kind of remote viewing, whereby the Magus and the Scryer can kind of see what's going on with God's people throughout the creation. And that's it. It seems to be a kind of tool for divine espionage. But, however, it does seem that there are suggestions that there are further mystical uses of the system, but exactly what all of this is meant to do, in my opinion, remains completely mysterious. We have this whole system, but it's not really clear what it does aside from spy on people. That's really the only inkling that the angels give us. Now, this is compounded by the fact that we have no evidence that Dee or Kelley ever used this system. Now, that's not to say they didn't. They could have. It's just that no records survive, and not the kind of thing that usually makes it in history. And I certainly think they meant to use the system. Some of their equipment survived Dee's lifetime and does right down to this day. Further, Sloane 3191 is clearly Dee's personal grimoire, and is very oriented toward the very practice of the system. So I certainly think they meant to practice the Heptarchia system. But did they? I actually doubt it. Why do I doubt it? Because the angelic revelations themselves shifted in priority. After most of the Heptarchic system was revealed through November 1582 and then a little bit in April 1583, the focus at that point was fully on the revelations of the Liber Loagaeth and the Gabofal ritual that had all of this apocalyptic intensity. Dee was simply taken trying to get all of the Liber Loagaeth stuff done, prepared on a relatively short notice, I think by August of that next year, and all of that stuff is even more fun. With grids and mystical languages and aethers and Enochian script and all of that, I think the revelations of the Heptarchic material, along with some of the probable preparation of some of it, was just enough and to jumpstart things to the next level. And that next level was the Liber Loagaeth rituals. Regardless of all that, with some creativity, especially knowing about the previous practice of Solomonic Grimoire magic through this period, it isn't terribly difficult to imagine rituals for things like consecrating this equipment, the kind of robes that one might wear while you're doing it, what further it might be done for. You can kind of fill out a lot of the final details of the system, and contemporary occultists have done wonderful forensic work to do just that. The genius involved here is breathtaking. I really admire this kind of religious forensic sleuthing, and I have to say, but to me, the Heptarchia system is incredible for not only its complexity and mystery, but also how it basically synthesizes so many centuries of grimoire or Solomonic magical practice that came before it into making one of the grand unified theories of practice of magic, frankly, of all time. In some sense, this system is a wonderful, amazing hinge between the more medieval, traditional conjuration of spiritual creatures, and that form of magic, and the dignification of the magus with divine magic, more typical of Renaissance magic, like folks like Ficino, also with a very strong admixture of Kabbalistic undercurrents coming in from Reuchlin and Agrippa. Here, the Heptameron, the Liber Loagaeth, more Goetic style spiritual descriptions, the planetary magic of the Arbitel and the Ars Paralina, the Theurgia Goetia, along with, Athanasius Kircher's. All of this and many classics of Grimoire magic are fused with the newly imported Christian Kabbalah and Ficino and Pico-like concerns, likely via Agrippa, with mystical dignification of the magus and conciliation with the divine in a true, and I really mean this, a true tour de force of magical theory and practice. In this way, I would say that the Heptarchia Mystica is, to me, far more impressive than the grids and the calls and the celestial Enochian language that often, frankly, just steal the show when studying this material. Indeed, there is a fantastic master's thesis, a dissertation maybe, precisely on situating this magical system within the larger historical context of that largical magical matrix I was just describing. It's in fact a thesis that I very seriously thought about writing before I gave in to my own intellectual masochism and tackled John Dee's 1564 Monas Hieroglyphica. Still Stockholm Syndrome with that one. The literature on Enochian is just enormous, but the volumes that have helped me, without which I could not have written this episode, include Duquette's Enochian Vision Magic. You just become cooler reading Duquette. Aaron Leitch's Essential Grimoire Magic, James's transcription of Sloane 3191, Joseph Peterson. Joseph Peterson knows who he is. His amazing website and his edition of John Dee's 5 books of mystery, along, of course, with a constant reference back to the manuscripts themselves and Joseph Peterson's website. I'd also point out that these texts are lovely, not only because of their incredibly close attention to the details of how these famed revelations came about. Again, these guys are working so diligently, it's amazing. But also how they all slightly disagree with one another, especially, for instance, in the creation of the Holy Table, or just in a practical sense about how one must attend to the angel's instructions in the creation of these ritual objects, with Duquette being a lot more liberal than someone being a bit more traditional about what should be done. I love that. Again, those are practical questions, and I'll let those expert practitioners debate those matters. But lively debate, if respectful, of course, is not only deeply productive, it's also a sign of respect. Respectful disagreement is a sign of respect. And at this point, if one were following the revelations, you can turn, frankly, to my series on the Enochian language and the revelation of the Liber Loagaeth. Of course, we're not done by any means with Enochian magic. There's still lots more to cover, including the later parts of the earth and the watchtower working that are found in the Cotton Appendix or in True and Faithful Relation. So more on all of that later. Again, hey Aaron, thank you so much for taking a look over this script. I really appreciate you and your work, and I really encourage people to go over to his website, get an autographed copy of some of his books, and support your local esoteric practitioners. But more Enochian magic to come. Until then, I'm Dr. Justin Sledge, and thank y'all for watching Esoterica, where we explore the arcane in history, magic, philosophy, and religion. Now I'm going to go dig around in my pile of mysteries. See y'all.